For months, the media and dozens of lawmakers have constantly and confidently accused President Trump of being Vladimir Putin's puppet, agreeing to follow his orders in return for having Russia hack the election, whatever that means. In this case, watch.
We are being played as fools by a spy master-in-chief, a former KGB officer, director of Russian intelligence.
But listen, if you want to believe the worst here, if you want to believe that Putin is literally pulling the strings of this administration, then this is exactly how it would play out.
Yet we have a president who not only denies the Russian attack and has a strange infatuation with President Putin, but is also suggesting policies that dangerously puppet those of Putin.
Why does President-elect Trump again and again and again take it upon himself to be Vladimir Putin's defense lawyer?
Well, now President Trump has bombed an actual Russian puppet, Bashar al-Assad of Syria. So what is the story going forward? Congressman Seth Moulton represents the state of Massachusetts. Last month, he said, quote, Donald Trump's minions are paid by the Russian regime. Congressman Moulton joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So you're one of the first people I thought of when the Trump administration sent those missiles into Syria, into the puppet regime of Vladimir Putin. And I thought, pretty embarrassing moment for you, isn't it?
No, not at all. And in fact, I think I was the first to come out with a bipartisan statement from Congress saying two things, saying that President Trump did the right thing to hold Bashar Assad accountable for using chemical weapons against innocent people, but also that we need a plan going forward. And I stand by both of those points, and I stand by them in a bipartisan way.
Well, those are entirely legitimate points, and I'm not questioning the substance of them or the motivation behind them. I'm pointing to the statements that you have made for weeks and months preceding that missile strike, when you said, for example, there's a lot of evidence that members of this administration are more concerned with Russia's goals than our own. They continually prioritize the desires of the Kremlin. Here you have the Trump administration, for good or ill, acting against the main foreign policy objective of the Putin regime, which is supporting Assad. So your view of this doesn't square with reality. Aren't you a little bit embarrassed now that that's obvious?
No, not at all. And first of all, I don't think we know what Putin's #1 foreign policy goal is. I don't think it's Assad in Syria. I think he has a lot of bigger fish to fry, and obviously he's interested most of all in the United States of America. But look, Tucker, you know, you and I can disagree on the Trump administration's connections with Russia. The bottom line is I don't think either of us really know, and that's why I've been a consistent advocate for what the American people want, which is an independent, bipartisan investigation to get to the bottom of this. And you know what? There's a part of me that really hopes you're right, that hopes that I am embarrassed at the end of the day, and we find out that there isn't any collusion behind the scenes between an American president and Russia. But we all deserve to know, and that's why I've been calling for this bipartisan investigation.
That's one of the things you've been saying, and I don't think it's a crazy thing to ask for. But as I just read, you have said, quote, members of the administration are more concerned with Russia's goals than our own. They're traitors, in other words. They're working for a hostile foreign power. These are your words. They're on your website. I'm not making them up. And I'm just asking you, how does that claim square with what we saw on Thursday night, where we bombed a client state of Russia?
Well, first of all, I mean, you know, one exception does not prove the rule. I mean, you know, this could very well be interpreted as an attempt by the administration to get out from under the claim that they're colluding with Russia. But the bottom line is that, you know, we don't really know. There are a lot of things that Trump has done that seem like they're playing right into the hands of Putin. We ought to just find out, Tucker, and I think you and I ought to be able to agree on that.
So increasing the size of our nuclear arsenal, deregulating the energy sector, backing the Keystone Pipeline, these are all things that the Russians hate, and for good reason. And yet you're saying that still there's no evidence that Trump is not in the pocket of Putin, even when he bombs a country where Russian troops are stationed now, propping up the regime of Bashar al-Assad. That's not enough evidence for you that he's not Putin's puppet?
Right. Right, and called the Russians to make sure they got their troops out of the way. I mean, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. He didn't consult with us before doing that, but he did feel it fine to call the Russians. So it's hard to say that he wasn't concerned about the Russian troops. The bottom line is this: I could give you a long list of things that Trump has done with Russia.
You just said it. Let me just back you up and get you to explain what you just suggested. Are you saying that this was part of an elaborate ruse, that in fact he was working with the Russians, I think you suggested a minute ago, to divert attention from this diabolical conspiracy you've been alleging, that this was a Potemkin bombing, a fake bombing, designed to fool the rest of us into thinking they're not really in league with each other?
No, look, I didn't say it was I confirmed that as an explanation. I said that is a believable, viable explanation, which is no different than what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot of evidence. I mean, we've heard investigation after investigation uncover stones that have Trump administration officials colluding with contacting intelligence officials with the Russians and then lying about it. I mean, we've heard that with Jared Kushner. We've heard that with Jeff Sessions. We've heard that with a long list.
Well, so this conspiracy is a lot deeper than I thought it was. So you're saying, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, members of the Trump administration met with Russian officials. That kind of thing happens a lot. Maybe it's ominous, maybe it's not.
Well, and to lie about it. And that's an important thing.
That's fine. No, but you're saying now that the military action we just saw on Thursday night may have been coordinated with the Russians to throw sleuths like you off the scent. That appears to be what you're saying. And that just seems like a huge conspiracy to me.
Well, it's a conspiracy if it's a conspiracy, but the reality is I'm just giving it to you as a plausible explanation. No, and that's why I said I'm not going to confirm it. Look, I know you would love for me to say that and confirm it. I'm just saying that there are people who think that. There are Americans who think that.
Who are they?
And that's as logical an explanation as any as you've given for Trump not colluding with the Russians. So look, the bottom line is
who are these Americans who think that this was a fake military action designed to throw people off the scent? Who thinks that? I mean, you said,
well, I'll tell you, a lot of the people. Well, I'll tell you, there's a majority of Americans who want an independent investigation into what's going on.
That's very different from what you're saying.
And it's hard to understand, Tucker, why you're opposed to that. Why are you opposed to having an independent, bipartisan investigation into what's going on?
You're trying to change the subject. I'm not arguing against an independent, bipartisan investigation. If you could put one together, I guess I'd be for it. But you're saying that there are people who believe...
I just want to make sure you're on the record for that, because that's important, Tucker.
Now we're getting into tinfoil hat territory. There are people who believe that Putin and Trump got together and said, hey, I have an idea. To throw Congressman Moulton off the trail, why don't we pretend to be in conflict with each other? Why don't we have the Prime Minister of Russia? Did you see this? This is what Medvedev said. This puts us on the verge of a military clash. Our relations are completely ruined. Do you think he's just faking it? He's just saying that for public consumption to fool you?
Tucker, that's very flattering that you think Donald Trump is concerned about my particular views on the issue.
No,
but all I'm saying is that we don't know. We don't know what's going on here. But what we ought to talk about is what we can agree on, which is that Trump actually, I mean, look, here I'm a Democrat from Massachusetts telling you that I support Trump's action. I support Trump's action in Syria.
I get it.
But I'm also saying that the Constitution demands that any further action requires Congress to come together in a bipartisan way and authorize that. And that's what we should be talking about here. Where is the end game? Where is Trump going with this?
Those are all fair questions.
That's actually the important question.
No, the important question is you are suggesting the President of the United States coordinated a military attack on a country with the knowledge of Russia in order to divert attention away from the Russian election hacking scandal. And that's a conspiracy so grand, so complex, so baroque that I stand in awe of the possibility that that's real. And I stand in awe of the fact that you think that's possibly real, and I sit awaiting the name of one person who agrees with you that that possibly happened. Just one. Tell me one person who is saying this.
You know what, Tucker? I just threw that out as an alternative hypothesis. I didn't say that they were actually colluding with Russia. I'm just saying that maybe this is a way for them to say we're willing to stand up to the Russian regime. You're implying that they would be colluding with Russia. Maybe you know something about the Trump-Russia connections that even I don't know.
But the bottom line... No, you said he called us in Congress.
The bottom line is, Tucker...
Putin. What's the point of that? What were you implying? I mean,
the bottom line is...
You're implying there's a conspiracy, which apparently you think there is.
The bottom line is, Tucker, that what Trump has done in Syria is okay, but some of the things that he's done in the past are not. And some of the things that his administration officials and his campaign officials have done in the past are not. And we ought to be willing to just address that in a bipartisan way.
Look,
in a way that says, you know what, Russia is an enemy of the United States. Russia is an enemy of the United States.
You've said
Let's
Russia
be willing
is the
to stand up to them.
enemy. Hold on. We just bombed Syria. There are Russian troops in Syria supporting the government
who we told to get out of the way. Yes, that's right.
Okay, so again, we're back to your conspiracy, but let's just get to facts really quick. You said recently, and again, it's on your website as of tonight, that Russia is America's #1 enemy. #1 enemy. So you would put Russia above ISIS, for example. You think Russia is a greater threat to America than ISIS?
Well, I think in the long run, Russia is, and there's a couple reasons for that.
And ISIS?
One is that they're very clearly trying to undermine our democracy in ways that ISIS does not have the capability of doing. And the other that, of course, Russia has a nuclear arsenal that is targeted at us at this very moment. And that's why they're dangerous.
But it has been targeted at us since 1947.
The fact that Russia is an enemy very seriously.
Okay, so but you think... I just want to
look, Russia is in violation of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty right now, Tucker, and this administration hasn't done anything about it.
Okay,
how do you explain that? Oh, who cares about a nuclear weapons treaty?
Okay.
I'll tell you, President Reagan sure cares about that.
I mean,
he would be rolling over in his grave if he knows that Trump's not standing up to the Russians on this.
Right.
Look, the bottom line is that we ought to be able to come together on the fact that Russia is an enemy, and we stand up to them.
You've repeated your talking point 9 times, but you haven't answered
well, maybe you just don't like it, Tucker, but it's not a talking point, it's a reality.
I'm agreeing with you, Congressman. That's fine. You just haven't answered why, if the president's doing the bidding of the Russians, our greatest enemy, worse than ISIS, then why is he seeking to expand the American nuclear arsenal? Why is he taking money from domestic programs and putting it toward the Pentagon? Why is he pushing NATO, our NATO partners to put more into their own defense? Those are not things the Russian government wants. They're the opposite of what the Russian government wants. Contend with the facts and get back to me on how that all squares up.
Well, look, you can give plenty of things that you like about what Trump is doing.
I was sitting on the Armed Services Committee. I'm just telling you, Russia doesn't like them.
Well, look, I was sitting on the Armed Services Committee a week ago when we had a bipartisan hearing where we talked about the fact that Trump is trying to cut the State Department budget and a lot of programs that are used to counter Russian influence in Eastern Europe.
I'm sorry,
and one of the things a Republican veteran stood up and says, look, you hear veterans on both sides of the aisle saying this is not helpful for our national security. So I can give you a long list of things that Trump is doing that are not helpful to our national security either.
And you may be right,
at least I'm here saying he did one thing right, which is to take this action against Assad when he used chemical weapons.
My own view is the opposite
is true.
This is the one wrong thing, but whatever. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on and explaining your views. I appreciate it.